Hello again. Okay, this is the second part of our cover design tutorial, specifically compositing images. In the first part, we took a few simple steps towards establishing the base of our image. Let's switch here to Photoshop and I'll show you. This is where we left off, where we have taken the uh, panoramic photo of Athens, Georgia, with our clock tower centered, and we've applied a specific gradient mask here to take away the sky and most of the clouds that existed here on the left side of the image. What we're going to do now is begin compositing the actual sky here. Um, if we were to look at the dry run that I showed you earlier, you'll notice that we don't simply brush away the existing sky from this small town image and then leave it blue. We actually build a cloudscape um, that's going to sort of serve as our base for this very funky, ominous, almost a little bit icky, blood dripping effect that's going on here. So you can see we're kind of a long way off from that. This almost looks like a green screen movie set where someone's just going to paste in the background after the people in the foreground finish their performance. So this is where we're going to start digging into our other stock photos. So I'm going to go back into that folder of stock that I grabbed earlier. We're going to start with this cloud image here. And I just noticed as we were looking at the test run image that there was a bug on somebody's camera lens or some kind of very tiny UFO. So we're going to get rid of this before we even start. So I probably don't need to explain this part, but I'm going to just in case you need it. This is the clone stamp tool. It looks like just like a stamp that you would smack on a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is blend this out by using part of the rest of the sky to do so. So you can see my crosshairs here. If I hold down the Option key, and that would be Alt for Windows users, it gives me an eyedropper tool. And I can select a part of the image and then release. You'll notice very faintly there's a pattern behind the crosshair now, and that's showing me what it's going to stamp and where. And right now it's saying I'm going to stamp the pattern that you just sampled over this part of the image you don't like. So I'm just going to click right there. And one more time. And ta-da! Our pesky UFO is gone. Look at that, you almost don't even notice it's there. So let's copy this image now. So we've got the entire thing copied. I'm going to close it because we don't need it anymore. Let's paste that in. Okay, I'm going to call this cloud texture. Okay, so let's zoom out. I want to show you this photo is not nearly as large as the panoramic city photo. And I want to scale it down so it's approximately the width of the book cover, just because I want to capture as much of the cloud texture as I can. And let's see here. I want to make this blend well with the sky behind it. I don't want it to set its own color tone. So you'll notice this is kind of a slate gray, slate blue colored cloud, whereas the city has a very sort of dusky, pinky, rose-colored tint to it. To me, this is a jarring transition. If I were to slide this up and compare the two, they don't blend well together at all. They feel fake. These are the kinds of things that, with a little Photoshop trickery, you can eliminate. A very common thing in stock book covers that are designed by authors is seeing images that just don't feel like they belong together, pasted together into a scene that doesn't feel believable because the color tones are wrong, there's light sources coming from different directions, there are no shadows, things like that. So what we're going to do is make these clouds feel more like they belong. For one, I'm going to move them behind the city image over here. Already you can kind of see the scene that we're beginning to build. And I turned off those guidelines, which you can do with Command H. If this is the first time you've ever used that particular shortcut in Photoshop and you're on a Mac, it might ask you if you want to use Command H to hide extras like the guidelines, or if you want to use it to hide Photoshop altogether, because you'll notice that when I'm looking at any other application window and I hit Command H, the Mac OS will hide that thing. So since Photoshop shares that command set, it will ask you which preference you prefer. All right, here's where we get to have a little bit of fun and start blending some things. So this cloud photo that we've selected, the first thing I want to do is strip it of its color. So I'm going to desaturate it entirely. There are a couple of ways you can do this. I use key commands, so I'm going to explain those as we go. But the simplest way is hold down Command, Shift, and press the letter U. And there you go. We have a desaturated image. Other ways to do this is you can hit Command U to bring up the saturation toolbar and drop saturation to -100. The way you can get to that is through Images and Adjustment, and then Hue Saturation right here. So anytime I can remember where something is located, I will try to explain where it's located. Otherwise, I will explain the shortcut keys that you can use. So again, Command Shift U makes our cloud texture black and white. Command H will hide those guidelines. So that's still not quite enough to blend it, obviously, because now we have a black and white sky and we have a color city panorama in the foreground. So this is where blend modes come into play. You'll notice at the top of your layer palette over here, you have this drop-down menu that currently says Normal. If you click it, you see all of these different modes that you can use to blend an image, or to at least make it feel like it lives in the scene. Soft light is one of my favorites. We're going to switch to that right now. And you can see that basically the image picks up all of the color properties of what's underneath it. It's essentially turned this into a sort of filmy overlay. So this is going to be the base of our texture going forward. This is a pretty good start, even though we still have a big discrepancy here. You'll notice we have a very periwinkle colored sky, but we have still a very pink and purple image. You can notice down here from the hints of the sky that are still left, as well as just the overall tone of the city panorama. It feels rose-colored, and our sky doesn't currently. So we're going to kind of cheat here. This is something I do when I'm building a scene. We're going to select our eyedropper, and we're going to sample some of that dusky color from the sky. Now that gives us kind of a dark purple. That's not entirely what I want. What I'd like is more of a sort of a dusky pink. So we're going to move around and select one that feels good. And I'm going to create a new layer. Now the easiest way to create a new layer is to go to the layer menu and choose new layer. But you'll notice right here there's a shortcut key for it, and that's how I do it. So that shortcut key is Command Shift N, as in new. Boom. And it gives us a new layer dialog box. So I'm going to name the new layer Sky Gradient, just for simplicity's sake. And that gives you a hint of what we're going to do here. So we're going to choose the gradient tool again. Again, it is a solid color to transparent. And where we put this layer it's beginning to be important how we organize these layers over here. The sky gradient needs to live behind the city because we don't want to cover the city with our gradient. But it can live below the clouds so that the clouds will pick up some of the color from this gradient as we go. So let's apply our gradient. Again, we're going to hold the Shift key. We're going to click down here on this tiny little station wagon. And we're going to hold down Shift and drag. And we're going to drag nice and high and then release. Hey, looky there. So let me turn off these top two layers to show you what we've done. We've just created this gradient layer from a solid pink to a completely transparent layer. Now when that's applied to our periwinkle background color, we start to get a nice, simple sky feel. This looks a lot like the original sky that we saw in the city panorama. When we lie our cloud texture over the top, you can see it begins to pick up tones of pink washing into blue. And with our city over the front of that, it masks a lot of that transition, and you start to get a very natural sky feel. This is actually clean enough, with a little bit of exception right here, where you see some of the original clouds and that sort of orangey color. This is clean enough. We could stop right here if we wanted to. This feels mostly like a believable scene, but I want to do a little bit more, and I'd like to take this a little bit farther so we get something that, at the end of the day, feels as dramatic as what you see here. So there's still quite a bit to do. Okay, so going back to our file here, we've added our sky gradient. Now we're going to go get our other cloud stock photo. So if you go back into the stock folder, or however you've organized your own, this is the photo we want to bring into Photoshop now. So I like this particular one just because of these sort of angry, tenderly things that are falling down from the sky. And would you look at that? It seems possible that whoever shot the previous cloud photo might have also shot this one, because they captured another fly or UFO. So again, to brush this out, we're going to choose our clone stamp. We're going to sample part of the sky by holding down the Option key and clicking. And then we're just going to brush over the fly. And ta-da, he's gone. And you can't even tell he was there. So Command A to select the entire document. Command C to copy. Command W to close. All right, now we want to paste this new photo in, and I want to put it on top of the existing cloud texture. Now, let's zoom out just so you can see what's happening here. This is a very large photo. It's behind the city layer, which is why you see this sort of halo around the city's horizon and around the clock tower. And of course, the image still has its full color, which is why it looks so ominous. We're going to give this a new name, and we're going to call it Ominous Cloudy Cloud. And then we're going to make it smaller. So we want to take this and scale it like so. There we go. There we go. So to scale it, we hit Command T. We held down Shift as we clicked on the anchor at the edge of the path, and then we drag. And that allows you to scale it to whatever size you want without losing your aspect ratio. So now we scaled it, and now it's in place right there. One of my favorite things about book cover design is how along the way you accidentally find that things just look really beautiful. Like, even though the color tones are all wrong, this is kind of a beautiful sky to put over this little town. And you'll notice that because these clouds have a lot of white in their sky, they're destroying this nice subtle gradient that we just created a moment ago. So we're going to fix all of that, and we'll see how it goes from there. So now, if you remember when I showed you that test run right here, our sky is ominous up here across the top of the image, but I wanted to give a little sense of the vastness of that southern sky there. So we don't want these clouds to sit so low in the frame. We'd like to move them up a little bit so that you get that sense of empty sky right here. So a few of the things that we want to do to this one to make it feel like it blends. We're going to convert it to black and white again. So again, that's Command Shift U. And I also want this one to have a nice, rich tone to it. So I do something occasionally called auto contrast, which is a very quick way to bring out the darks and lights of an image. And the way to do that is Command Shift L. Now, let me undo that and I'll show you what just happened. Watch up here. We'll do it again. Command Shift L. And that brought out all of the rich darks in the image. Now, you can do this very simply by going to Image, Adjustments, and just the image menu right here. Maybe it's Auto Tone that I used. I think that's what I used. Auto Tone is not Auto Contrast. Command-Shift-L is what created that. So that brings out some of the rich darks and the rich lights. We're also going to convert the blend mode for this photo. So over here where it says normal, we're going to convert that to soft light. And all right, now you can start to see how we're building a scene that works. And you can see down here, because there's so much white in the lower half of this image, it starts to erase some of the halos that we could previously see around this clock tower. So I think that's very helpful. It's basically kind of accounting for some of our mistakes. So one thing I might do is in the mask here is try to take out this particular bit of orange. It's bothering me a little bit. So let's take our brush and we're going to move that up. Just go with a medium-sized brush here. We'll set our brush to black. Make sure we've clicked on the mask here. And we're just going to start brushing just very faintly right there. Okay, and then I'm going to take my gradient tool, set it to white, and just clean up a little bit of that edge that I made right there by just dragging my white gradient close to that horizon line, like so. And that brings out some of those darks again. But now, most of that orangey cloud muddled mess is gone. So we're off to a good start here. I do want to mask out some of this white, however, that's in this image, just because it's a little too strong. It's a little overpowering. And it takes away from the sort of overcast feel of the sky. So we're going to apply a mask to our ominous cloudy cloud layer. And we're not going to do a complex mask here. We're just going to select the black foreground color, select our gradient tool, and just like before, hold down Shift and click just below the horizon and drag upward and then release. Do that a few times. The one thing you want to avoid, of course, is brushing away these really great dangly cloud bits here. So you can even start a little bit lower as you're brushing. And that'll give you a little bit of that sunset tone still there. Okay, let me save that as we're going. That's another good note for anybody who's working on a Photoshop design is save, save, save. Every few steps, save. You'll thank me for it later. Okay, so we have added our 2 cloud layers. That's still not quite enough of a cloud texture. You'll notice right here in the middle we've lost most of the texture of these clouds down here below. So I'm going to duplicate our cloud texture layer. The way I did that is Command J, or you can go to Layer and Duplicate. Okay, so we're going to rename this to Cloud Texture 2. Okay. Now, I want to show you how you can take a duplicated layer and not just stack them to create emphasis, although that is kind of nice. But I want to take the texture of those clouds and bring them down into this empty space here. And as I drag that photo around, you can see that the border of the photo becomes visible on the top and on the bottom, based on however we place it. So this is about where I want those clouds, because we start to get a sense of cloudy texture here in the background. But this line is a problem. So if you've been paying attention so far, you know the simplest way for us to solve that is with a mask. We'll apply the mask. We'll select black as a foreground color. We'll select our gradient tool. And again, we're going to hold down Shift, click just above, and drag. And we'll do that a few times. Not too far down the page until that erases the border that we had there. But it preserves all of the cloud texture here in the middle. Now, the other thing we can do is, because the cloud texture is now overlaying the city down here as well, you don't really see a lot of, actually it's behind the city layer, so we don't have to worry about it. So we're good. We can call it good right there. That gives us our cloud textures. So I'm also not totally feeling the city right now, because now that we've added these sort of heavy dark clouds at the top of the page, our city is starting to feel a little bit overly bright. It feels too happy. It feels too light. I think that we might want to give it a sense that it is a bit overcast by this sky. So we are going to create a new layer. That's Command-Shift-N. We're going to call this gradient, just to keep things simple. And instead of using a purple color like we did with the sky, we're going to go with a straight black. And we're going to choose our gradient tool. Again, a soft fade from a solid color to nothing. And I'm going to click down low here, hold down Shift, and drag upward just a bit. All right, you see we've just about decimated our city here. It's a little too dark, more than I'd like to do. So we're going to actually do a two-step process here to make this fit. First, we're going to change our blend mode here at the top right to multiply, which on the surface doesn't appear to do that much, but it's going to make the gradient feel like it belongs in that image more. We're also going to drop the opacity, which you can change right here. Okay, so let's turn off that layer. You can see we had a very bright city. Now we have an overcast city. Bright, overcast. I want to duplicate this layer just to give it a little bit more richness down there. So again, Command-J to duplicate, or Layer Menu, duplicate. Okay, but this is too dark. And if I wanted it to be as dark as I've just created it, then the first layer at a higher opacity would have achieved that. With the second layer, I want to change the blend mode to soft light. Now, let me turn that off and back on. You can see how with a soft light layer, it grabs more of the color properties behind it, and it feels more like a natural shadow instead of just a heavy gradient laying on top of it. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm choosing to transform that gradient. So by hitting Command-T, or go to the Edit menu and choose Free Transform right here. That gives you the bounding box around that image and allows you to size it however you want. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, click in that center, and just sort of scale it down just a bit to the horizon line. And that makes this gradient live exactly over that city. You can do the same thing with this one. And then our two gradients here, turn them off. They're doing a great job of making these really bright white colors and the buildings and the streets dim out. So now that our cloud cover over the top feels particularly ominous, and we've got a pretty good start here for completing our threatening, bloody cloud cover. So I'm going to stop us right here, and we'll pick this up in the next video.